Summary description. The Woman Warrior is a non-fiction book, memoirs of narrator Kingston. We don't know her name from in the book, but it's the Kingston. The book based on talk stories of the narrator's mother, which illustrate Chinese culture, myths, beliefs that they're actually Chinese. And there are 5 chapters and 5 main female characters in the Woman Warrior. So,
Chapter 1 of The No Name Woman. The first chapter and the whole book begin with the talk story about one of the main characters, the narrator's aunt. Kingston learns that she had an aunt who killed herself and the baby by jumping into a well. The woman's husband had left the country, so the villagers knew the child was out of wedlock. When the baby was born, the villagers raided and destroyed the family house. The woman had brought grace upon her family that pretended she had never been born. So they found out that she was pregnant, and then she felt so bad about it because her family treated her so bad that she killed herself and the baby.
Chapter 2, White Tigers. This chapter is about another talk story of the mythical female warrior from Fa Mulan. She was 7 when she started to be trained to be a warrior. During it, she was spending years alone on the mountain of the White Tigers. When Fa Mulan became old enough, she led the men army, and after all battles, came back home to be a good wife and mother. Kingston contracts this story to her own life in America.
it's like an actual story, it's like about the Mulan, but it's Fa Mulan, Chinese. Chapter 3, Shaman. This chapter is about another main female character, Kingston's mother, Brave Orchard. Her husband moves to the US and she uses his money to attend medical school. Brave Orchard tells story how she impressed her classmates by killing ghosts near the school. Brave Orchard tells many talk stories to her daughter, and many of the stories scare her. And the ghosts. This whole book, I think, is about ghosts. Not about the ghosts, but there are a lot of ghosts in the book. Sometimes they're just ghosts, and sometimes they call white people ghosts.
Chapter 4, At the Western Place. The 4th main female character of this book is Brave Orchard's sister, Moon Orchard. She moves to America to reclaim her marriage. Moon Orchard is too scared to find her husband and confront him, so Brave Orchard goes to the office where he works and tells her he doesn't want to do anything with Moon Orchard. The situation refers to another talk story. So when Moon Orchard and Brave Orchard go to the place where Moon Orchard's husband worked, the nurse is the lady who talks to them, and she says that they're like grandmas because she thinks that they're so old, and then that really makes them mad, and then they talk to Moon Orchard's husband, and the nurse was actually his new wife in America.
Chapter 5, A Song for a Barbarian Reed Pipe. This chapter focuses on Kingston herself. When she is at school, she is obsessed with a girl in her class because they are very similar. In the end, Kingston just looks at her life and thinks back to her mother's talk stories. She finds her harmony.
Okay, characters. And the first character is with the first chapter is the no-name woman, an actual aunt of the narrator, and so she doesn't have a name and doesn't get described either. She had a child out of wedlock. Her family is very disgraced by her and doesn't want to talk about her and her mistakes. After the village found out about her child, they destroyed her home and her food. After having the baby, she takes herself and the baby and she kills them both in the family one. It's the same as what's happened in the first chapter, because every chapter is about a character, so it's almost the same.
Brave Orchard. Brave Orchard is one of the biggest protagonists in the book. Brave can also be cruel throughout the story and show her dark side. Her family, Brave Orchard and her family, moved to America after living in China. She has been through many things, going through the transition of coming from America and the good and bad, going from being a respected doctor to slaving away and picking tomatoes in California. She helps Moon Orchard try to reclaim her lost husband.
Moon Orchard. The author Kingston doesn't give characteristics of Moon Orchard. Moon Orchard is from China. She is Brave Orchard's sister and Kingston's aunt. Her husband moved to the U.S. Soon after leaving, he finds a new wife. Moon Orchard moves to the U.S. and wants to comfort her ex-husband, but is too scary. Moon Orchard moves with her daughter and goes insane. Her family moves her to an insane asylum where she dies later.
Yes, it's the description of the chapter. And Maxine Han Kingston is the narrator. So her chapter is the last one, but there is no name of her in the book, and so yes, she finds her voice, her power in words. She's a warrior.
Vocab courtyard is an area that is completely or mostly enclosed by the walls of a large building. A refugee, someone who's forced to leave their country because of war or unsafe living. A barbarian, a member of a community or tribe not belonging to one of the great civilizations. Stowaways is a person who stows away. Invader, a person or group that invades a country, region, or other place.
Okay, why did you guys choose those words? Why did you believe they were important?
So a courtyard, like where they lived at, they like had their courtyard and then they had like their house right by it, but their courtyard was like enclosed with like a fence and they had like a garden and stuff in there. But it wasn't like outside, it had like their house right by it, so like you could like go outside and then like the courtyard would be there. Refugees, like people from China had to move because of like the war that was going on. Barbarian, that was like the last chapter, was the story about a barbarian and like what happened in China. Yeah, and stowaways, like just like with going from China to America and stuff like that. And then invader, like the whole village invaded no-name woman's like house and their family and destroyed everything that they had.
Big ideas.
Okay, so one thing that stuck with me was when Kingston was told.
Can you do me a favor? Don't read us the slide, just tell us about it. We can read that while you're talking.
Okay, so mine was about like how the aunt killed herself because of the baby, and everybody knew that like the baby wasn't her husband's because he was gone for so long, and just like how her family doesn't even want to like be with her or like even think of her as their family because of something that she did, and I feel like that was like pretty crazy.
So what's the big idea with that? Is it family? Is it justice? Is it...
It's like your family should just be with you, like, and help you and support you, and not just like disgrace you for some mistake that you made.
So there's a lot of Kingston stories that she talks about, but she never really talks about herself. But when she talks about her family, she really contradicts them and like judges them. She never really talks good about them. That's what I thought.
So why is that important? What does that show you about Kingston herself?
She's like self-involved. She only like judges others. She doesn't think anything is wrong with her.
So does that change as you go throughout the book?
No, not really. Not until you get like to the last chapter where it talks about herself.
There you go. So what happens in that last chapter then? Why is that important?
I don't know, like she like comes out with everything. She explains like, I don't know, just about herself throughout the whole book actually.
So every chapter highlights
Like
a
one,
female from within her family, and she is looking at them as a young teenage girl from America with those Chinese roots, and she's judging them based on cultural assumptions, and she doesn't understand. And as you go through that story, does she start to understand better?
Yeah, because she starts to like get to know these people throughout the whole book and actually understand what their culture and stuff is from the different countries.
Okay, so what does she end up thinking about their culture and her mother and her aunt and her grandmother in that last chapter? How does she comment on that?
I don't know, she just like says how in the end, how like she finally throughout the whole book she understands on how, what their rituals are, and she just understands each person, I guess. More better than she did in the beginning, at least.
Okay, and I wanted to say that Okay, this whole book is actually about a woman and their role of women in the community, in the Chinese community, and all these chapters there were different female characters, and some of them like go insane or like really bad. Some of them were not really like a warrior. But the second chapter, my favorite one, it's about the Fa Mulan, and it's about the warrior, and she was so strong. It's like it's like a hyperbola. Yes.
Hyperbole is a big exaggeration.
Yes. So I think that her story is the hyperbola, because it's like a lot of different stuff that you like. How it's even possible, like, for women to do all of this, because she's like a warrior, but at the same time, she has a husband and her little son, so she's like a perfect woman who can do both together, and yes.
So, is Fa Mulan your example that everybody's trying to be like? Is that what you're saying? The perfect woman?
I think it's like hyperbolist example, but example. It's like but okay, you don't actually go and live in the mountain for 3 years alone. But she.
But her
does.
character did that, right?
Yes.
So everybody else is trying to kind of have those same characteristics.
Yes, but not going to the mountain.
Yeah, not literally. Not literally. Yep, we got that. So she's actually a metaphor,
Yes,
okay?
I think so.
Because hyperbole is exaggeration, metaphor is the symbol, okay? So the
Yes.
word you're searching for is metaphor.
Okay.
But you're saying that some of the women in the book are not like that.
Yes,
They're not
like-
very
Like
powerful.
Moon Orchard, she was just too scared to go to her own own husband, and she was and actually she ended up dead in there. Mm-hmm. So
You guys have mentioned a lot of characters who are Moon Orchard or
Brave Orchard.
Brave Orchard, and it's actually Orchid.
Mm-hmm.
What is an orchid?
Like a flower.
An orchid is a flower.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these women are being called something beautiful because that orchid is a symbol within Chinese culture. It's one of the names you can use to show beauty. Do their characteristics reveal some sort of beauty with them? Does that work?
Some of them do, but other times it's like Brave Orchid is like dark. Like she tells really like bad stories and like.
Okay.
She killed ghosts.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing in Chinese
Well,
culture?
good, but
Okay.
just like how she tells them, sometimes they're just like dark stories.
So there's some superstition involved in the story?
Responses. So the first one is bad and the second one is good.
Okay, Goodreads.com, Emily had a response about the book. She said, I couldn't tell, and I don't think the publisher could either whether this book was fiction or not. It's called a memoir, but the back of my copy says fiction, yet it won an award for nonfiction. I know the author has a creative license, especially with the memoir, but the realistic chapters placed into the fantasy ones made the book too disjointed for me, and I couldn't get into it. I agree with it because like a lot of it is just like sounds real, like made up, because one time she's talking to like a board and she can see her family and stuff, and like killing ghosts and stuff, it sounds like really made up, and like it's hard to follow sometimes.
It sounds made up because what culture are you from?
Okay, well yeah, well it sounds made up. I'm just saying like I'm agreeing with her.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't, cause I'm not Chinese, like I don't.
Yeah, it's not part of Middle America's culture, is it? This whole giant belief in superstitions.
Yeah,
We
I
would
know.
call them superstitions. For a lot of Chinese and Chinese Americans, superstition is a regular part of their lives. And this whole section about Fa Mulan, which is considered a myth to us, is considered history from other cultural perspectives. So your person is saying that some portions of it feel like nonfiction, like they could be true.
Yeah, and then a lot of it feels like fiction because just how we view things compared to how they do.
So for you, did it feel more nonfiction or more fiction? Ladies, others?
So this book was just like flipping, boom, 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 because it was like talk stories of her mother, and so there were like a lot of like talk stories. So they like actually like it seems for me like fairy tales, and some parts were like her life in America, so like actual life, and it just.
So did it feel, because you used the word fairy tale, and I think a lot of people would agree with you on that, that from our perspective, that's what we would compare it to.
It's like Mama tell fairy tales, her
Yeah.
daughter, like,
So the book as a whole, did it feel like there were more of that aspect or more of the truth aspect to
More
it?
of the fairy tale aspect.
Okay.
The only part that, like, you could tell that it seemed real was the part where she was trying to figure out what was with her husband.
But for me, it feels like the girl told the story about her life, so she can tell like other stories. Like, so in the whole, I think it's like I can see her life, so I can see the nonfiction. Okay, and the second was.
I really enjoyed the way The Woman Warrior was written. It gave Kingston's story a very surreal feeling in the way that I would imagine her childhood felt very surreal to her. Kingston is a wonderful writer and storyteller. I would recommend this book to those who are interested in traditional Chinese culture and women's roles within that culture, and to those who are interested in what it is like to grow up as a first-generation Chinese American. I would also recommend this to anyone who enjoys good murmurs or storytelling. It is a very good book, and one that I foresee myself rereading in the future. I might reread it after I've already read it because I kind of understand it now, but during the time I was like, is it real, is it not? Because it's really hard to understand when you're reading it, but after you're done with it, it's like, okay, I actually know what's going on. I might actually enjoy it next time.
Yeah. So this is one that you could read more than once and get something different out of it each time. Good perspective. Good reminder to us as readers. Anybody else?
You're just up
Hmm?
That's all.
Yeah, I know. So do you agree with the idea that it helps people understand traditional Chinese culture, or?
Well, like if you're reading it like not Chinese, then it helps because you don't know. Like before I read this, I didn't know that they were so superstitious. You know what I mean? And
Okay.
like all the different things that they thought compared to what we think.
Did it help you understand Chinese culture at all?
Oh yes, it's very interesting. Like a lot of stuff they were like from the top stories from the history.
Good.
Yes, and I think the history stuff was much more interesting than the actual her life in America.
So, who would enjoy this book? If you were going to recommend this book to someone, say a certain kind of reader or someone who's interested in reading a certain kind of thing, who would you say, hey, you might be interested in this book?
Probably like Chinese people just because like it's their like background and their history, so then they can like reread like their history. But probably people who don't have any clue like what actually happens and like what the Chinese think and stuff like that. Like older people probably. to
Probably not
understand it.
kids though, because I'm senior. I did not get this book. It's probably not that okay.
That's valid.
But actually, the chapters are really different. so somebody can really like the one chapter, somebody can not really like another one. So like for me the second one, I really like second one because the second one was like inspirational. You're like, I want to do it too.
And I think that particular chapter, the one about the legend of Fa Mulan, draws people to this book.
And you can, I think the second chapter can read like even not really old people, not really adults, like more like us.
More accessible, maybe? Yeah. Class, questions for this group? Anything you want to know about their book? Okay, thank you. Give them a hand.